Tennessee picked up another commitment for the class of 2026, but this one, a 3-star, lowly rated prospect in the month of February. Why did Tennessee pull the trigger this early? I'll tell you all about CJ Edwards here on a Wednesday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. I am Eric Cain, your host, and appreciate you for being here. Appreciate FanDuel Sportsbook for being a part of the show. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Gonna have a fun show coming up today. Gonna talk all about the new commit for Tennessee and CJ Edwards coming up in segment 1 here in a couple of seconds. Segment 2, interesting article. Pete Nakos did a great job talking with collectives around the country, staffers around the country from different power conferences, and some agents from around the country on what is really and truly the Wild Wild West in college football tampering. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Well, there's some out there that says if you're not tampering, you're really doing yourself a disservice. We're going to react to some of the people that he spoke to from an article over at On3 in segment number 2. And then we'll get into Josh Ward coming up in segment number 3, all about Tennessee, the scheduling conflicts, Nebraska canceling, what's going on around the league, all that and more with Josh Ward coming up in segment 3. All right, so CJ Edwards. Who is CJ Edwards? Well, he's a guy that is 6'5", 215 pounds from St. Joseph's in New Jersey. He is a 3-star rated prospect. He doesn't even have a rating at 247 right now or ESPN, but at Rivals, he is a 3-star rated prospect. And at On3, he is a 3-star rated prospect. Does not have a national ranking right now. Consider the 78th ranked edge and the 14th player out of the state of New Jersey. This is CJ Edwards. He is obviously lowly recruited, but for Tennessee to want to go ahead and take him in the month of February here early in the signing class, that says a lot to me. That says that Rodney, Garner, Coach Chop, they like a lot of who he is and what his tape looks like. And obviously, that's kind of a reason why Tennessee went ahead and jumped on this one early. Here is a quote from Charles Power, On3 Director of Scouting and Rankings, on CJ Edwards. Quote, CJ Edwards, an interesting edge prospect and one who we saw have some flashes while playing for a top program in Virgin Catholic as a junior. For starters, he's a good athlete, and the combined setting and on the field, you can see his play speed and get off on his junior film, just kind of a twitched up, active edge defender, and I think he shows very good effort level and ability to kind of make second effort plays. He also plays to the whistle and shows effort and pursuit and the kind of just want to that plays at a really high speed and goes all the way to post the snap. I think that the effort level and ability to strain the finished plays is very encouraging. He braces the physicality, the physical aspect of the game. He initiates contact and looks to be a solid edge setter, run defender, and I think one who is going to continue getting better up front. We haven't seen a ton of film, or I guess our exposure to him has been fairly limited to this point, but the bits we've seen are encouraging, and we look forward to the kind of continuation of evaluating him. He's an intriguing prospect, and one certainly shows some flashes as a junior at his high school, end quote. So a couple things in there that I think we should point out, right? We haven't seen a ton of his film, or I guess exposure to him is fairly limited to this point. So maybe that's a big reason why. I mean, if the director of scouting and rankings is saying that for a publication like On3, then his 3-star ranking should be taken with a grain of salt, because they haven't seen enough from him, if that makes sense, in terms of camps, in terms of game field and all that. But what Charles Power has seen from him, he says a lot of good things. Quick twitch, good effort, sets the run as an edge defender. Those are all big things if you want to play the Leo position here, or really the Leo or the strong side defensive end spot at Tennessee or at anywhere. You've got to be able to set the edge, force the action back inside to where your help is. And so many times, I think edge rushers just want to get upfield and get to the quarterback. Well, that's only part of the battle, right? I mean, they run 50% of the time, most of the time, right? And so you got to set that edge, and I think that's a reason why at times James Pierce has been docked in his mocks or evaluation. He had to continue to get better against the run, and I think he did that as a senior. So CJ Edwards commits to the University of Tennessee. He's obviously been in contact with Tennessee Tennessee, Rodney Garner and Coach Chop went up to see him during the evaluation period earlier this winter, and they came together and wanted to get this done. Tennessee's continuing to look at a really strong targets, a class of targets that they want. On the edge, Tristan Givens, Dre Quinn, Zach Groves, Luke Waffle, J.J. Finch, all versatile defenders. Tennessee's continuing to recruit aggressively and trying to get back on campus here in the next month or so. Another thing I want to point out, if you look at On3's Austin Price, VolQuest.com, catching up with C.J. Edwards and some of the quotes from his stories. You can get all this over at VolQuest.com, full coverage and breakdown of this commitment, Tennessee's 8th of the 2026 class. This is from C.J. Edwards, quote, "So being a position that I'm in with a lot of scholarship, I'm just blessed to be in that position. I've been doing a lot of consideration with my family, and we decided to sort of just make a decision early so I can focus on my craft and get to work. At the end of the day, I want to be elite in college, and I want to be especially elite during the upcoming season. Just get to work and just make sure that I'm all set and I'm committed, and I'm just trying to put my best foot forward for the upcoming season." When asked about Josh Heupel, let's see here. When asked about Josh Heupel, he said this: "Like I said about the culture development piece, working on building there and desire to compete. It's a goal to get in, to go get it and not be lackadaisical and laid back. It's to go for it all and go win a natty. I feel like I'd want to be a part of that competitive society. We have a similar mindset, and I want to be with like-minded people. I feel like Coach Heupel is like me and one of those people, so I want to play under him." When asked about Coach Chop, who kind of headed up this recruitment, quote, "He recruits me hard, and we are in communication almost every single day with messages and encouragement and motivation. He always is communicating. We're on the phone a lot. One of the biggest factors and where I want to go to college is the culture. If you have a desire to win and are with competitors, then it fits my description. So he is a great person, a great coach, and just something that I wanted to be a part of." Remember, Coach Chop is coaching the Leos, and C.J. Edwards would be a Leo here at the University of Tennessee. And so no shock whatsoever that he was speaking highly of Coach Chop, who's kind of been Tennessee's lead recruiter for the last couple of cycles. You look at Tennessee's class of 2026 now. No movement in terms, you remember that we talked yesterday on the show how On3 redid their On300 rankings, the On3 specific recruiting rankings, and Tennessee moved up one spot in the national rankings from 10 to 9, moved up 2 spots in the SEC rankings from 7 to 5. This commitment doesn't change anything, but it does add another number to the class. And you have C.J. Edwards, who now joins a class that's headlined, of course, by Faison Brandon, who we mentioned yesterday dropped some in the On300 down to 34 in the country. But if you look at his On3 industry rankings, he's still number 6. 247 Sports has him as number 1 in the class. Rivals has him at number 2 in the class. ESPN has it at number 3 in the class. So very well thought of quarterback headlining Tennessee's class and Faison Brandon. Of course, Tyreek King is in this class. Carson Sneed, the tight end. Gabriel Ascenda, the offensive tackle. Tyson Bacon, defensive lineman. Tyron Evans, who jumped into the On300 wide receiver, along with Tyreek Key, wide receiver. I didn't mention him, but he's in the On300. Braylon Outlaw, linebacker, and now C.J. Edwards, comprising the class of 8 for Tennessee's 2026 recruiting class to date. So, bottom line, end of the story here. You may be stargazing. You may be sitting here and saying, well, this guy has no info on him. Only a 3-star. Doesn't even have a national ranking. I mean, why are we taking this guy? That's fair, okay? But remember, put it in context. We're in the month of February right now. If this was taken in November as kind of okay, well, this guy's got high potential, low risk. Let's just take him and see what happens. That's almost kind of different, right? Khalifa Keith comes to mind as a late ad. Arian Carter was a little bit different because, Alabama was fighting tooth and nail with Tennessee to get his commitment. But this is the month of February. So obviously Chop, Rodney Garner, Tim Banks, Josh Heupel, they love a lot about what they see in this guy, and they think that they can take him, put him in the collegiate strength and conditioning program, and get him to where they want him to be and where he wants to be, which is elite at the college level. So anytime those guys sign off on a guy this early that might not have the pedigree of some of the other guys in his class or at his position, I'm okay with it, again, because this is the month of February. You wouldn't be wasting a spot if you didn't like what you saw. So I'll be following C.J. Edwards' recruitments over the next, up until signing day. I'm sure he's going to get a bump at some point. They redo these rankings all the time, and certainly we'll see if he can jump inside the on 300. So Tennessee gets a new commit, the 8th commit of the class of 2026, by the name of C.J. Edwards, 6'5", 215, long, explosive, quick twitch off the edge. Will play the Leo position here at Tennessee. What is tampering? And if you're not tampering, are you doing your team a disservice? Pete Nakos, great article over at On3. We're going to react to that here coming up next as we continue on here with this Wednesday Locked On Vols. Want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on all that than over at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I've missed my chance, and you won't either. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your one shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. We got Josh Ward coming up here in about 7-8 minutes or so, but before that, I do want to get some reaction to a story that Pete Nakos, national reporter, NIL, legal matters, transfer portal, all that and more, does a great job over at On3. Of course, you guys know I work at VolQuest, the Tennessee affiliate of On3, so I'm kind of pumping the company here, but some really interesting stuff. Dynamic views and quotes from avenues of kind of where we are tampering in college football. You talk to staffers, you talk to collectives, and you talk to the agents. Who's responsible for college football tampering right now? Who's responsible for it truly being the wild, wild west? Well, the easy answer 100% is the NCAA, because there's been no guardrails. They did nothing to prepare for this moment a couple years ago, and they had 30 years to do so. The NCAA's fault here wholeheartedly. But driving the tampering aspect of it, I mean, is it assistant coaches? Is it other players on other teams? Is it the players themselves? Or is it agents? It's easy to kind of sit here and point the fingers at the agents. And truly, the agents are literally only doing the job that they're hired to do. But some interesting quotes here that I wanted to pull, and we can kind of react to them. And I'm only going to read a small handful of them. I mean, there's so many quotes over here from these 3 different layers kind of discussing how teams go about tampering and some of the experience that said staffers have had with it. Many believe if the school is not tampering, then they are doing themselves a disservice. That line was, I kind of highlighted that line in the opening paragraph, just to kind of set the scene on how rapid it is and how much it's happening every single day in college football. This is from a Big Ten staffer. Quote, if an agent signs our top 3 players and we present our deal to them and they think that their client is not getting paid fairly, then they just pick up the phone and call 10 other teams and send them on to the highest bidder. I mean, that's happening, every single day. Another Big Ten staffer here. As much as tampering is a problem just in college football in general, the agent side of things is the biggest issue in my opinion. And they're just doing their jobs, but it makes it super tough. Absolutely does. Another Big Ten staffer says, I don't know anybody that doesn't, talking about tampering. Group of 5 teams are doing it to crappy Group of 5 teams. There's a whole league right above us that does it the right way, and we're refusing to go to them for help, end quote. Well, obviously the National Football League has collective bargaining, and CBA will get brought up here in another quote in a minute. Until college athletics and college football truly, and everybody will say amateurism's dead right now, but I mean, it is for the most part, but truly ditches the amateurism model and, gets a work union in place and all that, then CBA is not going to be a thing, and we can't really make those public. But this specific staffer's right. I mean, the NFL is doing it correctly, but the biggest difference in the NFL and college athletics right now, there's no CBA. This is from an SEC NIL collective. Quote, Tampering, it's one of the biggest problems, if not probably one of the main problems that people don't want to talk about because everybody is doing it. It's unfortunate with the way these agents have figured out the model in football, having two portal windows. Having two portal windows just exasperates the problem even more. And these kids are constantly in play because of the multiple portal windows. It's really nonstop. It's year-round. The players have a plausible deniability. The coaches have deniability because, oh, I didn't talk to the kid. But you and I both know there's always a middleman that facilitates that. 100%. And how can you prove about the middleman? And if the middleman's not affiliated with the program, then how's that tampering? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's legal ways to go about tampering, which is illegal, as crazy as it sounds. This is from an ACC NIL collective. Quote, I'm already getting text messages. You know, when you pull up the ESPN and get the stat line, I probably get 10 to 15 of those a day. And it's just like, do you guys have any interest in this kid? Hey, this kid will be in the spring portal. What would you pay them? Agents are just shopping. They're hustling. It's become part of the nature of college football at this point. And again, the agents are literally doing only what they've been hired to do, which is just the wild thing. Now, so we've heard a lot of crap talk about the agents, if you will. Let's hear from the agents. Here's a couple of quotes that I pulled from agents from this story, Pete Nakos over at On3. Quote, agent number one. Quote, you almost have to tamper. A lot of these guys know where they're going to go a couple of weeks left into the season. People blame it on agents, but it's teams too. To be a top-level school, you have to do it. The only way to get ahead of things with this current model, it's vital for teams to be successful, and if you're not tampering, you're going to lose. The only schools who are going to say that they don't tamper are the ones who are sucking blank in the portal. There's a lot of truth there, and he's not wrong. He's absolutely not wrong. If you want to say, oh, well, you know, tampering, I'm not going to do all this. I mean, I respect you, and I agree with you. But, you know, Trent Dilfer's gone on in press conferences and stuff and talked about how his players get tampered with all the time. And, buddy, your team's awful, you know? And, like, even the quote a moment ago, good group of 5 teams are doing it to bad group of 5 teams. I'm not advocating tampering, but it's pretty evident, you know, some of the teams who are really, really bad obviously aren't doing this. That's not the only reason. There's coaching, there's like a player development, all that and more. But I think there's some truth to that. Here's another quote from agent number 2. They do it through their agents, which is the funniest part. If I have a close relationship with a general manager, they'll go, hey, can you get in touch with this guy? I think the only fix is collective bargaining. Because right now, if you have guys on your roster that are being tampered with, you're supposed to wait until the portal opens and everybody's already got a spot because they've been tampered with. This makes no sense. So because of the way that the calendar is with 2 different spring and winter transfer portal windows, it's making it all that worse. Again, Matt Rule's reason for canceling the Nebraska spring game is complete and utter BS. All right. Nobody's going to sit there and watch Nebraska's spring game and from Nebraska's spring game say, ooh, I like that guy. Let's go talk to him. Spring portal window opens up in 5 days. Let's go talk to him. Let's get him lined up. They're going to know all about that said player way before the spring game. Unless he's a true freshman and he's already put feelers out there like, hey, I don't like it here the first couple of months as an early enrollee. Everybody knows about that said player. Everybody's got tapes. Everybody watches. I mean, football's streamed everywhere. Football's on television. It's a national product. Okay, so don't give me they're going to watch my spring game and come after my players. Good grief, that's so pathetic. But it does make this tampering thing year-round because there's 2 different windows. One other quote I want to read here, and trust me, there's plenty of other quotes here. This is from a Big Ten staffer, okay? We beat a team 2 years ago in our stadium. This is on being tampered with. Then 3 days later, 2 recruiting staff members from that team were direct messaging one of our top players who, he's such a nice kid, came in and asked us, hey, do you want me to take this to compliance or do you guys want to kind of handle it at this point? So I just called up the recruiting guy and said, hey, what are you doing, dude? To which he quickly says, well, that wasn't me. And I'm like, oh, well, I got screenshots if you'd like me to share them with you. I mean, what's funny about all this is like when you're tampering, you're not even doing a good job. Like you got to cover your tracks. But a lot of good things from some of those quotes that I've read out there, and there's plenty more quotes to go and dive into over at this article on 3 from Pete Nakos. CBA is the big one. Until there is a collective bargaining agreement, you can't make public multiple-year deals. You can't. I mean, everybody's on a year-to-year deal right now. You get a deal, you're like, oh, you play well, I demand more money. Sometimes players and their agents say, oh, didn't have a good season. Well, I'm still going to leave if you don't give me more, right? If you're locked in on a 2-year contract, then you're locked in. And that's how the NFL works. That's how professional sports work. So we're not going to see that unless there is a CBA. And sure, eventually I think there's going to be a CBA, but they're not close to it right now. So I think there's that thing. Obviously, a big takeaway is the multiple transfer portal windows that accelerates this whole thing. Sure, agents driving it, but obviously agents doing their job. General managers who have relationships with agents and or members of the national media also driving it. Oh, man, it is the Wild Wild West. And as you can see, I'm talking from so many different angles here. There's no way to kind of police this right now. Plausible deniability. What a great excerpt from that quote earlier that I read. Coaches have plausible deniability. Players have plausible deniability. Oh, I didn't talk to them. You know why? Because there's someone else doing it for you that is not affiliated, right? I mean, there's been that stuff going on for decades and decades. So anyway, really interesting stuff over at On3 per Pete Nakos. I encourage you guys to go check it out. It's a free read. And actually, no, it's not a free read. You got to be a member of On3, but it's worth it. This is worth the subscription for sure. There's about 20 other quotes that are in this story that I didn't even read. So really, really good stuff. Go check it out. That really kind of paints a picture for you that, man, this truly is the Wild Wild West. Hey, what does Josh Ward have to say about all this? Nebraska canceling the home and home series in 2026, 2027, all that and more. We check out Josh Ward for Ward Wednesday, the end of Wednesday show coming up right now. Josh Ward, it was announced late last week that Nebraska was going to cancel the home and home in 26 and 27. There were some national media members that went out and said Tennessee and Nebraska canceling, and Danny White said, oh, no, This was Nebraska. This wasn't Tennessee. I understand it's a tough spot for Tennessee to be in, but I'm also not going to sit here and act like Tennessee's not done the same thing a couple of times in recent memory. Your thoughts on no mas, Tennessee and Nebraska in 26 and 27?
Yeah, reminder that college football is a business, and Nebraska made a business decision here. Doesn't mean Tennessee should like it. Doesn't mean Danny White should be happy about it. But you're right, Tennessee has gotten out of games in the past. It is unfortunate. That was a home and home that I think was nice for Tennessee with a big-name brand that would be still a beatable football team, I think, projecting a year and 2 years out against Nebraska. And two great fan bases. Tennessee and Nebraska have two of the most passionate fan bases in college football. Tennessee can still replace those games. I'll be very curious to see how that plays out. I would love for it to still be home and home. I've told you, I'm sure, multiple times where I stand on the neutral site games. Don't like them. On occasion, maybe, but do not like them. And some that Tennessee have played and will play coming up in the next couple of years, not a big fan. But Tennessee might be in a position where it just kind of has to, depending on what they're able to get done. Can it be two teams? Can it be 1-1? In 2026 and 2027. Scheduling is just a big question right now in college football. That applies to the SEC and the Big Ten with what's happening moving forward and how many conference games the SEC will play. Right now they're at 8. There is maybe growing interest in going to 9 within the league based on what happens in the playoff format and all of that. So unfortunate that the Nebraska series goes away. My hope is that Tennessee replaces that series with at least quality opponents in the non-conference.
Yeah, you brought up one-offs and neutral site games, and I just think it's such a neutral site games is the biggest wasted opportunity. And I understand it's a huge money grab. I get it. I mean, Tennessee's going to make a boatload of money for playing Syracuse and Atlanta, which that does nothing for me. I mean, at least Syracuse is a pretty good football team right now. I mean, that makes it a little bit better. But when this was scheduled, it's like, why are we doing this? But in 26 and 27, it might be one-off neutral site games, and it's not going to be Danny White's fault. I mean, literally everybody else has already got their schedules booked through 2030 like Tennessee had. If they are neutral site games outside of Atlanta and Charlotte, I mean, what are we doing here? Like, what other opportunities are there? Maybe 2027 at the new Titan Stadium, but that's a big TBD because, of course, it's not built yet.
Yeah, I don't know. Part of it depends on the opponent, and if it's a quality power conference opponent, they probably want, if it's a neutral site, to be as even as possible in the neutral space. I mean, Tennessee just played NC State, and that was technically more favorable to NC State, I guess, because it was in Charlotte. Tennessee had plenty of fans there, and Tennessee had the advantage with the personnel. So I think it starts with which teams can you get involved. And one of the teams that fans on our show on Friday, when we were talking about it just hours after the news, a lot of fans wanted to see a home and home with Notre Dame. I don't know if that would be in play or not. But if you're looking for a team that has both years available, 2026 and 2027, where weekends can line up, that is very difficult on short notice. We can play the blame game. I guess it's technically Nebraska's fault. It's just Nebraska's choice. Nebraska exercised the right that it has within the contract. And again, it's unfortunate for Tennessee. I just hope Tennessee is willing to play a quality opponent. That's the bigger deal to me. I'd rather see a quality opponent neutral site than a really bad opponent coming into Knoxville.
Let's play that game. You mentioned some texters, joining the show and on the text line and voicing their want to play Notre Dame in a home and home. I did that same exercise here on Locked On Vols. If everything was the same and you can pick and choose who you wanted to play home and home, and I know that's not how it works, right? You can't just go out and say, all right, USC, let's go. Mm-hmm. What are these teams that you'd want Tennessee to do a home and home with? Mine would be Notre Dame, USC. Those were two of the ones at the very top of the list. And I know Tennessee's played Notre Dame in semi-recent history, but I want to go to South Bend because as a college football fan, I've never been, and that's just something, a bucket list type thing for me.
Notre Dame is my answer. Notre Dame going to South Bend, Notre Dame coming back to Knoxville. I actually like that there's history there. There are memories that fans will think of on both sides from those games. Now, when it came up on the show, Swain's memories in the mid-2000s were not positive, but Tennessee fans will think about the miracle at South Bend, and it's a fan base that is very passionate on Notre Dame's side, and we know about Tennessee's position. Again, two great historical programs with Tennessee and Notre Dame, what they've done over a long period of time. So that would be the answer. Penn State came up in conversation because there was the chance Tennessee could go to Penn State in the college football playoff. Tougher to get there than to Columbus, but I think fans had interest in that game if Tennessee was going to be traveling. So what about a home and home with, again, two proud programs, two big fan bases? That one would be good. I like the idea of USC. Swain pushed back on our show because he said, I don't know if that going all the way out to LA is in the best interest for Tennessee. I would say yes. I would think that would be great. It's funny to think, well, that would be a SEC Big Ten matchup, Tennessee versus USC. But that I also threw out, what if you knew scheduling? What if you did a non-conference if you're in a tight spot with an SEC team and you just made it a non-conference game? Nobody's going to go for that, but I threw that out and immediately got pushback.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. I mean,
like, what if the Florida? Here's an example: if Florida goes away from the schedule, why not play Florida? Florida already plays Florida State, so they might have less interest. Look at what they've done with scheduling recently. So Notre Dame again is my number one answer, but I was immediately shot down with the idea of playing somebody like Florida, even though I will be disappointed if the Florida game goes away for Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, say in 4 or 5 years from now, this 9 game schedule, it's rotation. Tennessee doesn't play Georgia every single year. I mean, Tennessee, Georgia, right. Early September, non-conference. I mean, I see what you're stepping in right there. College baseball does that a little bit, and they do it in midweeks, and it's like they have an egg bowl midweek Tuesday. It's kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? But it's something. I'd rather
see. Again, Florida's the example because they might come off the schedule. We could choose another team too, but I'd rather see an odd non-conference home and home with Florida, knowing the history there and how much that means to both sides, versus games against Rutgers and Indiana.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. I know you saw this because you're all about the glasses and the pocket protectors. That's what I always say, the phrase I always say whenever I pull up Bill Conley of ESPN. Part of his SP Plus rankings, this is the returning production. These are SEC teams. Tennessee ranks 11th out of 16 with 50. They're ranked 58 overall in terms of returning production. They ranked 87th offensively, 22nd defensively. Any surprises there? That's kind of about where I thought they'd be. I know they've got a ton of production coming back on defense, so top 25. I know they got a lot of work to do on offense, missing a lot of offensive linemen, missing a lot of wide receivers. Obviously, Dylan Sampson, the tailback. And when you put all things considered, I thought it'd be kind of back half of the SEC. And lo and behold, that's kind of where Tennessee is. What was it, 10th or 11th? 11th right there. Any surprises when Bill Conley put out his returning production piece over at ESPN earlier this week?
Well, I would have thought back half of the SEC nationally, maybe a little lower because Dylan Sampson produced so much at running back. Most of the wide receiver room has to be replaced. Also, if you consider in this just conversation of what Tennessee has to replace, 4 starting offensive linemen, that is a big part of what the offense is. So that comes back to more general conversation, won't show up as much statistically. But defensively, Tennessee does return a lot. They have to replace James Pierce. Keenan Peely had to be replaced in the middle of the season, so they kind of began that process at linebacker this past season. So Tennessee's in an okay spot. It starts at quarterback. Tennessee bringing Nico back is a big deal there. And then it comes to what can he do heading into his second full year as a starter for Tennessee. That's going to be a huge part, but he needs the help of the new offensive linemen, be it transfers or guys that will have a chance to come in, or David Sanders as a newcomer with a good chance to start at right tackle. What happens at wide receiver around Nico? Does he get more help from the position? Does Mike Matthews make the leap that so many people hope he will in his second season? That's a big part of it. Tennessee has to replace a good amount of production. Tennessee has to replace a lot of personnel at wide receiver. The Vols are not going to upgrade at running back considering what Dylan Sampson did, but perhaps they can be deeper throughout the season, and they definitely can be better at wide receiver. It's just a big question because of the amount of unproven players around Nico.
We had to give you your flowers over the weekend. Chaz Lanier going off, full 22-piece in the first half, 30 overall as Tennessee knocked off A&M on the road. That was quite the ball game there for old Chaz Lanier, wasn't it?
Yeah, on the road against a top 10 team over the last 20 years, Tennessee shared some of the statistics. It's just one of the best road performances by a player in the SEC in the last 2 decades. And that helped him nab his 3rd SEC Player of the Week honor this season. He's been a terrific addition. So, yeah, timing was pretty good from our conversation last week. But he's on a bit of a run. The Kentucky game at Rupp Arena was bad. He shot 0 for 7 from 3. Nobody's going to argue otherwise, Chaz and Rick Barnes included. But, Eric, if you pay attention to what Rick Barnes has said recently about Chaz, it's not that he's making shots. That obviously matters. He has to score points for Tennessee. We talked about him probably being the X factor offensively for what Tennessee does. The numbers can back that up. But it's the way that he's playing. Rick Barnes talked about getting downhill and trying to get to the basket. We had a Tennessee fan on Monday's show say, I liked his dunk as much as his threes because that was kind of the mindset of attacking the rim. He's a big, strong player on the wing. If he can get to the basket, he can get to the free throw line, but getting around screens, fighting through what defenses are doing against him and taking those shots. He's not always going to make them. He's going to have another down shooting performance, most likely. That's just the way that it works in this game. But if he's playing that way, even missed shots can create second chance opportunities on his 3-point attempts within the offense. It's the way that he plays, I think, that matters so much to Rick Barnes. And the way Chaz Lanier has played recently is very good for Tennessee.
Every single day, noon to 3, 99.1 The Sports Animal. Josh and Swain, you can get it on your radio dials. You can stream it wherever you are in the world. And, of course, you can follow him on Twitter at Josh_Ward. Josh, as always, man. Oh, and that newsletter Friday morning, there's a free download link or a free link to sign up in the show description of this episode. Josh, as always, man, thanks so much. Appreciate you. And we'll see what Tennessee does the rest of this week, and we'll talk next Wednesday.
Big week coming up. Thanks, Eric.
Awesome stuff there from Josh Ward. Fun show. Talking about the Wild Wild West, talking about Tennessee's newest commit, edge rusher, C.J. Edward, and I'm really intrigued and curious to see kind of how he continues to grow and evolve over the next year. I'm sure he's going to get a bump in the rankings and all that, but a nice little diamond in the rough find here in the month of February. Intriguing to see kind of how his process goes here over the next year or so. Fun show. Appreciate you guys for being here as always. Same time, same place. Let's do it again tomorrow morning. This is Locked On Vols.